Hey, thanks for stopping back by. This is part 2 of our top end build, big bore kit, bigger cam, new lifters, and let's just jump right into it. Welcome back to Butler Customs Motorcycle Shop. Now, I suppose in the last video, I shouldn't have stopped it till I took the pistons out and I got them out of the way and kind of cleaned everything up, but I'm just continuing on. We were waiting for the cam bearing to come in, and it finally came in. So I want to let you know, don't go cheap on your cam bearings. Get the good quality Koyo cam bearings for the Evos. I believe that's as close to stock as you're going to get. Also, the night before you're going to do your cam and your new lifters, get you a cup, put your new lifters in, and fill it full of good, clean motor oil. 2050 is what I recommend. Let them soak overnight, okay? So these have been doing that. I think most of your good, especially your fueling lifters, they're pre-oiled and filled and stuff, but they're wrapped and wrapped really well. But I don't know how long they've been sitting on a shelf, so just out of a habit, I pre-soak them. Some say you don't have to, but do that. Just if you think about it the night before, just do that. So I think what I'm going to do first is I'm going to pull this cam bearing out, put the new one in. The reason for that is I couldn't find my Evo puller and installer, so I had to borrow one from a buddy of mine. And we'll do that now, and I'll bring you around here and show you what that looks like. All right, I think I got you in here kind of the best angle. I might have to move you around as I'm trying to work on pulling that bearing out and installing the new one. First thing you do, get this oil slinger out of the way. Just pull that out. And then I call it an oil slinger. Some people call it an oil gear, but oil slinger just sounds cool. That's the stock spacer shim for the stock cam. Lay that aside. You don't want to forget to put that one of those back in there. We'll be doing probably different size shims, but we'll get that cross that bridge when we get there. I do want to show you one thing. Let me see find something to point with. I got a pen here. All right, if you look inside the bore here, there's your cam bearing, and back here you can see one of the rods, piston rods. Now this puller is like a wheel bearing puller. It just goes in, and then as you run hammer tap this in through here, it expands it. So this tip is going to probably come out further, and so you want to make sure before you start installing your puller that you rotate your flywheel to where it doesn't show any of your piston rods. So I'll go ahead and do that. We'll put it right there. Now you can see, actually let me go a little bit for there. That's good. Maybe even a little bit more. Yeah, there. That's good. Now, as you can see, I got a lot more room, a lot more depth back there to put that puller on. Now on your puller, I'll take that rod all the way out, so I'm just left with this. And then, depending on who used this last, it won't fit in there because it's spread out. So what I'm going to do is, you can either get you some pliers and just kind of smash these ends in a little bit, and then it'll go in, and then your rod will expand it. The way this is going to pull is that this goes in there, the rod goes through, tightens it, then you're going to slide this big sleeve. It looks like a big socket. You're going to slide this over this, okay? And then this big socket thing is going to set, it's made to set right over that case housing there. So it sets right on there. You want to get it on there nice and flush. And then as you tighten the threads up on this, it'll pull that cam bearing out. It's not like pulling a big, huge bearing. It's a little bitty bearing. Take your time and be careful with it. Okay, I think I got you in a good angle looking down in the lifter block hole there in the front cylinder. And I think I can get you zoomed in good enough there. Now, when you're needing to compress this back so that the diameter is smaller, this has a groove right here, so you do not want to booger that groove up. So what I do, especially since this is a borrowed tool, I'll wrap a little cloth around it. I'll just take some pliers and I'll just grab this side and just kind of, it doesn't take much pressure at all. You're just kind of closing that gap up a little bit, just like that. And we'll see what we got now. Oh yeah, I think that's going to get us in there good. There we go. Now that's in there good. And then we'll get our rod. The rod's the same on both ends, so it doesn't matter which rod you go into. But I will tell you this, before you put your rod in, get you a little bit of oil. And grease that up just a little bit. That'll help with the sliding in process. And already now it's getting a little tight. Now what I like to do, I'll go ahead and install the puller on here. Now this end is flat. This end has an indention. And the reason for that indention is that bearing is going to come out and rest in here. And then when the bearing is completely out, the whole mechanism will come out. Now before I put this on, I'm going to run some oil on these threads. I'll slide that on. I'll go ahead and put my washer on. And some kits will have a rolling bearing washer, and that kind of helps so it doesn't kind of booger up your spacer. And then we'll put the nut on. I just want to go ahead and have everything up here so that I'm not having to assemble it later. Okay, I'll just get it kind of a little snug. All right, and then I'll take a soft blow hammer. I just want that to go in. There we go. Now I heard it hit the back of that flywheel. And now I can tighten this up. Now usually it's got a little cutout here where you can put a wrench on here and then turn this up here. Let me go ahead and get these two out of the way so we don't damage those. But sometimes if you got everything oiled up good and the bearing's not in there too tight, you can just rotate it with a socket. And I like doing that because I get a little bit better feel for the bearing. And I'll look here and make sure it's not turning on me. If it is, then I'll have to do something different. But this one is staying still. So like I said, it's not under a lot of pressure, and with the right tools that you've got, you'll find that that bearing just, let me get a deep socket. What is this? A 1 1/8. All right, I didn't have a 1 1/8 deep socket, so we're going to have to do it old school. I got a, surprisingly, a 15 millimeter. It wasn't, a 5/8 was kind of too big for it. So I'm going to hold this, put this in here, but this isn't really moving any at all, as you can see. The bearing was coming out, so just take your time. The socket's a little bit smoother, and think about crescent wrenches or any wrench. All right, when you're pulling on this end, and it only puts pressure on 2 points of the nut. That's why when I can, I like to use sockets. But this is going really well. Now I will tell you, when this bearing comes out, it comes out. Okay. So when you start feeling that bearing getting close to the end, you need to be kind of holding on under here. Now I've seen guys drive this out with different pullers, and then they'll try to install it with using the old bearing and a block of wood and a hammer, and ooh, that bearing is so small and so kind of thin with all those roller bearings. I wouldn't trust that, guys. That bearing and that cam, they have to be precise. It might last you for, 10,000 miles down the road, but then that'll be it. So I felt the pressure kind of getting easier. So I pulled it out, and there's our nice little bore there. And then let me get this off. And since we oiled all of our threads up, it's coming off like a brand new one. I'll clean this up for my buddy. Then we'll pull that out. And then we'll pull this off. And then I'll go ahead and push his rod back out for him. There, so there's the bearing. There, so like I said, it's very small. It's not a big bearing. Very small. Now, what you'll see on the new bearing is one side, the lip will be rolled. On the other side, the lip will be flat. So think about if you were going to install this, what would be the easier end to line this up and get it going? Well, it would be the smooth end, right? Because it would find it the hole quicker. The flat end is what you would push against to get that in there. Now in the kit, we have the same tool for that. So what I want to do now is clean this up like so. And you can inspect in there. And all right, again, don't go cheap on your bearings. I mean, you're talking about a price difference of $10. So don't go cheap on your bearings. Now you will want to oil this up. And if you got your cup with your lifters, you can just give it a good dip. Whirl those roller bearings around on your fingers. Don't assume that just because it's new that they did a good job making it. So roll that around. Get it good and lubed up. Now, again, here's the smooth rolled end. Here's the flat end, okay? So we want to go with the smooth rolled end right in that hole. Now, our installer has this thing here. And it's got a little lip that sets on. And when that bottoms out, the case will bottom out here on this lip. And then when it gets tight and you'll feel it bottom out, then you know that that bearing is in there where it should be. Now you say, well, how do I line the bearing up? How do I get it to where it's not all crooked? Well, that's where this comes in. Here's the plate. And so this plate goes on here. It's threaded. And then whoop, it just goes right on in. They even give you some little knurled bolts here. And usually on the plates, they have an up and a down marking on them. They'll let you know, hey, this goes this way. But this one does not. And I believe you can just put it on there and eyeball it. So you'll run your boat in the plate. We'll screw this on. Just get it kind of hand tight because you're going to be tightening it up anyway. On this style, there is a curved piece, there's a flat piece. On your case, there's a curved piece, there's a flat piece. So we'll line this up here. So now I'm going to squirt some more oil down, let it run down around that where I just had my hands on it. All right, we'll just use an adjustable wrench. I don't want to put a socket on this because I want to feel if there's anything dragging or caught up or just out of whack. I don't really care much about damaging the bearing. I can replace that, but I sure don't want to damage the casing. So you want to take your time, make sure everything's lined up, and it should not give you any type of like catch or resistance. It'll get tighter as that bearing is going on and being seated, but this is going really, really well. And again, it's got that lip on it, so you don't have to worry about running it in too far. Okay, so as you can see, I hope you can see, we're getting kind of close to the bottom. So when I get a little closer, I will slow down, not turn so much. And then we bottomed out right there. So you'll feel it, it'll be tight. It's not going anywhere. Now all you have to do is just back this out. And then you can always, before you take your plate off, you can back this bolt out and you can look and see the depth of that cam bearing and make sure it's where you want it. That way, if you feel like you need to go a little bit more, you can, but that looks perfect. That looks great. Now, another way that you can inspect that, I'll show you real quick. We'll take this plate off, get this installer out of the way. As you can run your pinky in there and feel the back side of that case and feel that it is indeed seated. And you can see here that we have a good lip. Grab something to tell. There is a good lip right there where the bearing is seated down inside, and then it's nice and smooth right there. So that is exactly where we want it. You don't want to smash these in when you're installing it because these are roller bearings. So make sure you're still rolling good there. And our cam bearing now, the old one's pulled and a new one is installed. Now that we have the cam bearing in, before we actually put the cam in, we're going to need to rotate the flywheel. And it's easier with these pistons off. So I'll go ahead and take this piston retainer ring out. You want to make sure, of course, that you've got your motor covered, because this ring is under tons of pressure when it comes out. And I've got this little bitty screwdriver that I like to use for this. Now we are putting new retainers clips in, so we don't have to worry about boogering these up. And once I get one of the ends poked out, I'll just grab this, since we're not reusing these, and I'll just twist it out. Now that's out. These have been in here a while, you can tell. So what I'll do now is get a socket that just fits on this pin. Well, hold on. It's starting to kind of wanting to come out. And I want a socket that just fits down here on this pin. I want it on the back side, and it's got to go inside that retainer ring. And I'll just lightly tap till I can get this pin to come out enough to where the whole piston comes off. You want to be careful of your studs. Okay, so I finally got this out, and buddy, this thing was stuck so bad. I had a light set in here that I didn't realize was facing right back in your eyes, so you couldn't, it over brightened everything, you couldn't see. So I'll move you around to a different side and show you this back one. We'll do the back one now. Now I'm telling you, the back one is probably going to be just as bad as the front one, if not worse. So I'll get this up to the highest place. I'll put us some rags down in here. So that wrist pin doesn't fly down in any places we don't want it to. I had a time getting that off. Now, I went with the soft mallet, and that wasn't working. I went with the clamp. That wasn't working. Felt like I was just going to break the piston or screw the studs up. So, yeah, you can run rubber hoses on here, but that's not going to help if you put pressure on those studs. So what I wound up doing was just using this 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch ratchet socket, put in there, and then the extension, and I used a hammer, but only to shock it. So I held back here the piston, making sure it didn't move the arm or the studs, and I would just shock it. That's all I would do. Once I shocked it 3 or 4 times, I was able then to take the soft mallet and push it on out. But that wrist pin was seized up in there. Now, I did go ahead and just out of curiosity run the new wrist pin, and it slides in beautifully. There's no slop, and I'll show you that later when we go to put the pistons in. But luckily this brass ring here, this insert in here doesn't need to be pushed out and a new one in and then bored out. It's fine. There's really no scarring in it. It's just been in there so long that thing was really stuck. So now we've got this one. I think it's up at the top. Oh, there we go, a little bit more. And we'll work on this back here. Again, kind of the same procedure. We'll go ahead and pull that pin out. Make sure you've got everything covered up that you want. Just get up under there. Since we're putting new ones in, we can bend this one out a little bit. We can take our pliers and we can just grab a hold of them and pull it out. Now, let's see how, yeah, that one's going to be stuck as well. It looks like it moves. The issue seems to be this around here has gotten boogered up. You could probably take your Dremel tool and just get in here, since you're not going to reuse these pistons, and bore this out a little bit. But it seems like it gets caught out here, not actually inside the sleeve. And so that's how I felt kind of safe about go ahead and putting a little oomph on it. Now this stud is out. I'll show you how to replace that stud or get the stuck nut off of it. But this is going to help us. We don't have to worry about bending the stud. So I'm going to get on the other side and we're going to just shock it out. And I'll show you that. I will take the soft mallet as well. I'll try to hold this and hold that. And that's all I'm doing right there. Is holding the piston, holding my tool, giving it a good little shock like that, and I can feel it coming out, and hopefully you can see it coming out. So I'll hold that. There we go. Now you'll want to drive it out until you feel that piston kind of fall in your hands. There we go. I'll get my socket out. we can bring that up. Now, as you can see, I can't even twist that. So it's getting stuck on this outside, not so much on the inside. And let me grab a new pin. And then with the new pin, you can see that, well, there we go. That slides in nice and smooth. See that? Nice and smooth. There is zero play in that. So success, success, success. Now with that all done, we can turn now the flywheel a little bit easier when we put our cam in to line it up. Now also, it's a good time to inspect your rods. You want to go back and forth, and that's good and tight. Now they're not overly tight. If you let them go, they will fall. That's what you want. You don't want to ever do a big bore kit or a cam upgrade or anything if these are so tight that they don't just naturally fall, because that's going to put a lot of stress when you're compressing those pistons down. So good thing to check. And of course, our guides for our pins look good. And now we can go ahead and start on the cam. Okay, so we got our new cam ready to go in. Now I want to put this in dry. This is going to be a dry fitting, so we can test our gap between the back to make sure that our lobes are going to ride well on our new lifters. Now, you might get a cam in a box that has some grease on it, and because it's been sitting on a shelf for a minute, it's kind of gummy. So you want to take some brake cleaner or carb cleaner is what I like to use, and clean off all that gummy stuff, especially back here that's going to ride on your roller bearing. Now on this gear here, some will have a dot. This gear has a little notch down between just two of the teeth. It's the only notch on this gear. So that's a notch you'll align on this side. On this one, there's also a notch in between two gears there. And I'll try to zoom in there for you so you can see it. So I've got my breather gear spacer on, or oil slinger, whatever you like to call it. So what I like to do is try to line up this. I'll go ahead and, this is a spacer that come on there, or shim. I'll go ahead and put that on there. I'm suspecting we're going to have to use that. And then on the cam, you'll see 2 points. One for your breather gear and one for your timing gear. So what I like to do is try to set that in there a little bit where that's going to go in to my bearing. And then it's not, you're going to have to kind of move your rods as well. So there I'm lined up there. Now I'm off a tooth here. So I will need to pull this out and line this up one tooth over. Put that in. Make sure that's seated well. So if you look here, I'm timed with this dot right on the line. This dot's on a tooth, and that's good because that tooth goes in between these two teeth with the mark. This dot's on a tooth as well. It goes in between these two teeth on that same mark. So as you go, as I pull this down a little bit, you'll see that that lines up there and that lines up there. Now we will be pulling this back out to oil everything, but now that it's set, I know that I'm not far off. I know that that is where that needs to be. Now we will be putting a new seal, oil seal, right here in this plate because, well, it comes with one. But to set make sure our gap is correct, our clearances are right, you will need to put this cover on with this in. Usually a dry test is best. And then to do that though, you're going to have to use your new gasket. So go ahead and grab your new gasket. We're just going to set it on there. We're going to set the plate on there. We're going to put 2 bolts in and tighten them. I like to use this bolt here. It's closest to this gear. And this bolt down here is closest to this gear. I like to use just those 2 bolts here. We'll tighten them down. You don't have to torque them down, but you need to tighten them down. Make sure your surface is clean. And I know a lot of you guys kind of freak out that when I start tearing into a bike, I don't clean it off. Well, the reason for that, mostly, like in the transmission case, on this case, in this circumstance, I'm in here anyway. I'm going to pull this back out. I'm going to clean her. I'm going to pull the breather gear out. I want to clean everything up and then oil everything down, put it in good. Then I know everything's clean. It's really pointless for me to clean everything first, go pull everything, then have to clean it again. So I just do it one time. But if it irks you, clean it all off first. Less debris gets in, that's true, but I'm going to clean it all out anyway, so it really doesn't matter to me. Okay, so if you buy the James gasket kit, top end rebuild kit, it'll come with 2 gaskets. The older style Evo, and this is a newer year Evo, so we'll be using that one. I love these James gaskets. So just set that on there. Now, again, we will be replacing that seal, but not at the moment. So I will start it in there. There we go. All right, that's on. And we'll take 2 of our bolts. Like I said, I like to use that one and this one. Again, we're not going to torque these down. We're just tightening them just to hold the plate on where it's going to be. Okay. Now we'll move up top. We'll look down, usually in this front tappet block, lifter block hole. We'll run our filter gauges in and check our clearances and make sure that we're good there. Now there is in play. I did pull the cam out, push the cam in. There is in play that is correct within the specs. Now, one of the things to check besides this, when you're doing this cam, that a lot of people overlook, and I'll show you what that is. Well, there's actually 2 things, but let me show you one. Is once this is set in and you've checked your clearances for the end play, you want to slowly rotate these rods and make sure that this back intake lobe, the lobe closest to the case, is not going to touch over where your casing is. So I'm going to set this here. You'll feel it, but I just want to make sure, just to double check. Oh yeah, we have plenty of clearance. Go back and forth here. Yeah, we are good. We'll go around this other side. Oh yeah. So we are good here. Everything feels really good. Now, of course, we'll pull this back out. We'll oil in there. Another thing to keep in mind is on this cam gear, check where your breather gear goes in. Check to make sure it's not riding against that case. And I'll show you when we pull this off. Well, actually, I think I can get you in there now. Okay, so we're looking in the back of the lifter block here. There's your gear for the cam there. Here's your breather gear, a wool slinger that slides in there. And then this casing right here, where your oil breather or your breather gear slides into, you want to make sure it's not rubbing right there, that the cam's not rubbing against that. Sometimes you'll have to go in and just take a Dremel and just kind of shave a little bit of that off just for clearance sake. You can run you a a feeler gauge in there just to make sure it's not touching. Ours is not touching, so that's good. But that's something to check that a lot of people don't. And you need that. So you need to make sure the cam is pushed all the way in for your end play. Make sure it's all the way in, and then make sure that's not touching right in that area. I'll show you a little bit more when we pull the cover back off to oil everything and clean it, and then put it on for the final time. Okay, so we've pulled the plate back off after we've checked our end play on the cam. And as I was looking at it, you know, with the cam cover on, there was enough clearance between this right here and the cam gear. But as I was looking and kind of playing with it, I can kind of, I don't know if it's just me, but I can almost feel it touching that. So I think that what I'm going to do, once I pull the cam out, I'm going to take a little file and just file the face of this right here. You can also use a Dremel tool. Stick you a rag back in here and rags up here if you like. The Dremel tool will make quick work of it, but the file is a lot more precise. So if you're good with the Dremel tool, go ahead and knock it out with that. You'll see a cutout here, so you don't have to go up in here or anything. It's just this right here. And you're just taking, I mean, just thousandths off. Just to get a little bit, that's just a little too close for me. And I don't want it rubbing that. I don't want it making a grinding noise or a whining noise. Another thing that they'll tell you to check is also your teeth here, as they fit into your pinion gear, and that they need to kind of line up, not line up timing wise, but as far as your gear, I guess, depth. And there's a way to measure those, but what I have found is that the Andrews, they're always spot on. You can kind of eyeball it and see they're fitting in the grooves well. Never had an issue with that, but just something to kind of be aware of. Now, again, guys, understand, do your own research. These videos, they're for entertainment purposes only. This is how I wrench. It might not be the correct way. It's just the way I do it. So with that in mind, do your own studying. I am in no way an expert at these things. So I'm going to stick some rags back in here. I'm going to rag all this around just where I can get in here. I'm probably just going to go ahead and use my Dremel tool just to knock it out real quick. Shave just a little bit off, set the cam back up there, and then see what we got. Got my Dremel tool, and I've got an extension on here. Got a little diamond, little bitty thing here. I think that's going to kind of work best to get down here to the area I need. I don't want to use a big stone or nothing, so I think this is going to work for us. I've got clearances, but like I said, it's just a little too close for comfort for me. So I'm going to just shave that down a little bit. I've got a little kind of hand file to just smooth it out a little bit. Again, I didn't take much off. I'll take over rags out. We will be spraying all this out, then oiling everything down good. Now let's see what we've got here. Oh yeah. Now I feel better about that. I know that the cam's never going to rock like that, but I feel real good about that. So just pay attention to that. If that's what you need to do for clearance wise, that's what you do. All right, so now that's done. What I would like to do, spray all this out, oil it all down, oil the bearing, in the back, put our breather tube in, line our timing up for everything, put the gasket on, put the cover on, torque it down, and we're done here. Oh, but I got to put the seal in, the new oil seal right here for this. So let's go ahead and do that now. We'll pop that seal out and put a new one on. Now I lost a little bit of audio in this recording, so I'm kind of doing a little voiceover as I'm editing. So we're going to get that oil seal out, and the best way to do that is going to be to remove this cover from the bike. Easy to do, just follow this line up. There'll be a zip tie there if nobody's messed with it or changed the timing before. Then right past that zip tie you'll see a connector there. So all you want to do is just disconnect that connector. This one was real gummed up where it's never been probably removed from the bike before. And then that way we can take the cam cover over to the table and we can work on it there. We're going to have a time trying to get that cam cover off, so I'm kind of glad we went this option. Of course, you could do it there on the table if you wanted to, lay a block of wood under it there on the lift and a center stand or something like that. But it's a whole lot easier to take that off and take it over to a bench where you can work, and then you can get it, out a whole lot safer and better. Now, when you get your James top-end gasket kit, do yourself a favor. Don't open it like this. Flip it over and open it like that, because all of your what's in here is listed on the back, which is actually the bottom of the case. So you've got your tappet cover, lifter cover gaskets. You've got several different gaskets for your fuel make it happener, as Derek says, or your carburetor. That's the carb. That's a EFI, electronic fuel injection. You've got gaskets for your exhaust, and for some reason we've got two here listed in the box, and they sent me 4, so if you need some extra ones, I got them. Your timing cover gasket. Now this is for your oil pumps, 2 different ones here. Some oil pump keys and fittings. We are not doing anything with the oil pump. We will take the little screen out and clean that. Your rocker cover gaskets that are kind of rubbery will be in there. Your intake gasket that the carb actually sets on. These are your intake gaskets for the manifold itself that go up against the heads. Also your gasket for inside the head and your little butterflies as well. These are your gaskets that set on top of the head as well. And it even has their own torque procedures. These are metal with the rubber covered. Really good. So I hope there's 2 in there. Why does it only look like there's 1? Yeah, okay, there's 2 in there. So you'll want to follow whatever is recommended for the gaskets you're putting on. Here's your base gaskets, and these are much better upgrade than the paper gaskets that come stock on it. So I would highly recommend a James gasket. Now, it does come with head gaskets. However, when I looked up the big bore kit that we bought, it recommended getting the James head gaskets, JGI 1677084A. The head gaskets that come in this, let's see if I can find it. All right, there's 2 gaskets, a cylinder head gasket. There is 66773-85T. So I got these because this is what they recommend. Now, I'm not sure the difference, but I guess there is since they're different part numbers. So we won't be using these as well. And here you have your seal for your cam cover oil seal for the cam shaft itself. And then this seal, this bigger seal, goes on the primary side, which we will not be using. Then, of course, you've got these covers here, or washers here, for your rocker cover bolts for the top. So on this year model, I believe it even says this on here. No, maybe it doesn't. It's in the manual. You'll actually use the paper ones and not the metal ones. And the valve seats, or these new valve stem seals, are very nice. They've got the little spring on them. They're a good upgrade, so we'll be putting those on as well. All your rocker tubes, your push rod tube things as well. Another couple little O-rings. I think it's for the oil pump itself. And then the cam cover, which we did not use. That's for the older style. So it helps if you open it up upside down. I wish that they had, when they list all this, the part numbers, they would mark them individually in bags so you know what's what. But after you do them a couple of times, you kind of can kind of guess. Now, if it's your first time doing something like this, save your old gaskets best you can. Then you can compare them, especially like your little O-rings and things where you're not certain where they go. The push rod, or the tappets and lifters, they have O-rings as well. So it's good to save those and then compare them to some that are in this packet. So right now, we'll put this back together. Flip it back over. And we'll get this sealed out here. All right, helps if you got a seal puller with two different sizes. I believe the longer one gives us just enough to get in there and pop that up. I might have to stand up and do this. Yeah. Well, I just got to move you out of the way. Well, come on, baby. All right, that ain't coming out, is it? All right, my seal puller is having some issues getting that out. Probably where it's so deep down in there and I can't get a good angle to pull it. So we're going to have to go old school with some old-fashioned screws. What is that made out of? Good night, it's like titanium. All right, now that we got a little hole in there, I'll run this in by hand. And you want to have a screw that is taller. Now I'm just going to run it in just till it kind of grabs it. Good. We've got to take a cloth, cover over right here. And then we'll just take our hammer. Good night, that thing is in there. Never seen one in there like that. It's coming out, but good night. Okay, that went all the way through. There. Whew, finally. All right, we'll clean up inside there. All right, and we'll take our new seal. We'll get some oil on the outside, and then we'll oil the inside before we put it on. And let me get a socket that's needed that will fit over that to press in. All right, we'll oil this outside up. The open face goes down, of course. We're trying to keep oil out. We'll set that on there. Now, when you're looking for a socket as a driver, you want to make sure it's a little bit bigger than the seal itself. because you don't want to drive that seal past the surface. And so we'll just put that on there. Just gonna get a couple of taps in there just to get it going for me. And then we'll drive the seal in, making sure that it's seated all the way around. It's nice and level with everything. And there's our new seal. Now we'll of course oil this up and clean this out, but this is ready to go back on. All right, now we got everything ready to go back on. We've got everything good and oiled in there. I'll just throw some more on just for good measure. I'm going to throw some up around that. I've already oiled all this, but we are good there. We'll clean our surface up here. Got the surface of the cover cleaned. We'll grab our gasket again. We'll throw it on. We've got our timing marks lined up. We've got our new seal in, and then I will put a little bit of oil around that new seal, and then we are ready now to carefully, delicately place that on. Got everything good and tight, all of our clearances. Now we can run this back around where it was. We'll be sure to zip tie that again. We will snap it back in. So we got our timing back adjusted, and now we're ready to put our screws in. We'll blue Loctite these, and these are torqued to from 90 to 100 foot-pounds, or inch-pounds, good night, don't go foot-pounds. We did pull this out a little bit, so I'm going to pull this back in to where it's going to fit in there nice and tight. We're not going to put this actually in yet because we don't have our bell on, but I just want to see, leave me enough room where it's going to fit good, because it's got that little keeper there for your wire. You want to make sure when you crank down on these bolts that you don't pinch that wire. This bottom one right here, I'll just get them hand tight. Then I'll go up here to this top one. Then down here to this bottom one. Then back to this top one. Down to this bottom one. Down to this one right here. Then we'll go back and torque these. All right, and then it's important to clean up underneath, because you don't, if you've got a leak in a gasket, you want to see it before you put everything back together, like the exhaust and stuff, because that'll have to come back off. Now we can put our bell back on, and we'll blue Loctite that little nut or bolt down as well on that, and then we're ready to go up top and put our lifter blocks back in with our new lifters. Now our bell only goes on one way. There's a little key here, and there's a key in the cam, So we'll go ahead and place that on, and you want to feel it set on there, and then you kind of want to wiggle it to make sure it's setting on there. Then our little bitty bolt, we will blue Loctite that. Maybe I can get it with my mitts. Yep. Now when you're screwing this in, that bell can kind of move on you. So before you get it finger tight, you want to move that bell around, make sure it's seated on the cam as it should be. So I'll actually, when I go to crank on it, I'll actually hold it, that bell on there. That's down, torqued down. Now when we put this back on, remember we marked where our timing was. Now I'm not going to put the cover back on and rivet it back on yet. I want to leave it off. I can access it easily with the exhaust on, because with the bigger cam we may have to adjust the timing a little bit. But for now I'm just going to set it up how it was, because we made our good marks there. They're still on there, easy to see. And then we can just, it kind of fell back into exactly where we had it. So I'll just push there to hold it and tighten these down. Now again, we should be done inside here. But when we set that rear lifter block on, we can actually rotate the motor and actually visually see those lifter rollers riding on the cam lobes, just to make sure everything's good. So you don't want to go all too far and put everything back together here and your exhaust all back on without checking that. So let's go ahead and get our new lifters. I'll show you. There's one more step we have to do on those lifters, even though they've been soaking in the oil. So here they are, soaking in our clean 2050. SAE is all I recommend on Evos. My pan head, I just run a straight 50 in it, SAE of course. I don't like full synthetics, even on the twin cams. And it's funny, you know, this is a single cam. Then you had the twin cams, and then when Harley came out with the M8s, they went back to single cams. So kind of neat there. And then the Sportsters are a whole different bird. Okay, so we're going to make a mess here. It's going to be really oily, so you want to clean out a spot to catch all that oil. I'm going to probably get a little piece of cardboard. Let me stick these in here just so I don't lose them. We'll get these lifters out, and then there's one more step you need to do on these lifters, even though they've been soaking. Go ahead and pull one out. Now they have been soaking in some of that good oil. But there's one more step you got to do before you're ready to place them in. So there is a hole here. Now, while these have been soaking overnight, air might be trapped in there. So you're going to want to pump oil into this feed hole and get all the air bubbles out. To do this, I found it best to get you an oil pump, oil can that's got this little bitty nozzle on it. And you can stick it on there, and it fits in there rather well. And then you can just pump. Come on, pump. I know I got oil in there. Okay. Maybe I don't. Oh, yeah, let's get some more oil in there. Okay. That's too much. Now, these newer style oil pumps, you know, I've got this. It's an Eagle made in the USA. There's no telling how old this is. I found this in a barn. Me and my son-in-law went to get a truck out of a barn, been sitting there for probably 20 years. And he had this old oil can. I've been looking for one of these 10-man oil cans forever. So how much you want for that? He said, oh, I'll take it. So I took it. But it doesn't have a right nozzle on it for what we need here. So these work pretty good. The new ones, and you can get them at Harbor Freight, I think $3 or $4. That's what I paid for this one. There's some oil coming. So as you can see, I don't know if you can see the top of that or not, but there was air coming out. And now that lifter comes all the way up, and look at that oil coming out the top. That's what you want. So that lifter is ready. Let's kind of try to set it up somewhere. All right, let's grab us another lifter. You want your lifters pumped up, okay, all the way. Now you watch the top of this and you'll see the difference in where the lifter sets and the air and oil that comes up out of that. See that air that came up? There. Now all the air is out of those two lifters. We'll try to set them there. Let me go grab some more paper towels. And look, you can try to wear rubber gloves doing all this, but it'll drive you batty because it'll be so slick you can't hold on to nothing. I know oil's not good for your hands, but it is what it is. Now our old lifters here for the rear lifter block, we can just push those out. And it was time to change these out. Now these are going to set the oil hole there. These are going to set that way. So what I want to do is get rid of all this gasket here. Now the gasket on the bottom of the lifters blocks, they're not that hard to take off. The base gaskets are hard. So I say that, and then look, these are going to give me trouble. Usually you could get you a blade up under there and just go around. And don't try to peel it off, okay? Just go around and use the tip of your blade up against that block, the round part there, and these will come right off. Okay, we'll clean this up real good. Now, your lifter blocks underneath are marked. This says rear, so that's good. You will have an O-ring and a metal ring under there. I'll leave these in here for now until I get ready to put the push tubes on, or push rod tubes, and then I can change these out. That way I don't forget to do that. On the bottom, you'll have an oil hole right here. You want to line that up with the oil hole on the top, so it's going to set in this way. Now your new lifters have that hole, and I like to run them pointing toward the inside. So I'll point that new lifter in there. I'll slide it right up in there like that. I'll take the other one with the hole pointing toward the inside of the case, toward the motor. I'll run that up in there just like that. Okay. Now with the new gasket, you want to make sure that it lines up with the oil hole that you're putting on. All right, and then we'll get our key lock, our little tab lock there to lock these in, and then these are ready to set on. All right, we got our new lifters in, we got our gasket on, we got the gasket lined up, we've got our surface up here clean and smooth. We've got our locks in for our lifters so they don't fall. Now we're ready to set this right down where it should be. Now we've got our tappet screws. We'll clean those up real quick. Now to clean these up, learned that on TikTok. Cleans the threads up really, really well. You don't put a lot of pressure on these, okay? You're not trying to rethread it. You're just cleaning those up. Let me put a little blue on there. I've never had these back off. They've always been tight. But let me blue Loctite them just in case. Now I want to run these down right before they're about to touch, but not touching the top of the lifter block. And the reason for that is these can move, okay? They'll move around. Now they make tools, special tools that go down in there, but what I like to do, since that block is off, is that I'll look in here, see where they're going to ride. And we are good. We are good. And you can kind of tell by the markings that's on there of where they kind of set before that you're lined up. So I'll crisscross them and then we'll torque those down. Now when we let our pin out, our lifters will fall and they will ride on that cam lobe there. And then we can actually turn. All right, guys, so we got our rear lifter block in. We got the clip released so the lifters can go down. And we have a big problem. We have a huge problem. This is why you check things as you go. Don't throw everything back together. If you look in here, let me see if I can keep a light on you. At the way that our lifters line up on the lobe of the cam, they are way off. Way off. They're so far off that the lifter, not the roller, but the housing that holds the lifter roller on, is hitting the next lobe over. I mean, they are way off. I wish I could get a light in there good enough for you to see. Hopefully you can see how much that's off. So at this point, we've got to pull the cam cover back off again. And we've got to put in a bigger shim to get it to come out to line up where our lifters need to be. I'm going to leave this lifter block in with the new lifters. And that way I'm going to pull them up and hold them with a pin. And in that way, when I put the new shim and thrust washer in, I can see exactly where it's going to sit. But that is way, way too far off. At this point, that's going to be hitting that next lobe, second to the back. It's going to be hitting the side of the lifter. So we'll fix that. But already this video has ran kind of long. So I think we're going to stop here and do a part 3. You can learn from my mistake. But we'll fix this. Had I just not even checked and thrown the other block in and went ahead and built it up, started it up, been a catastrophic failure. So when you're doing this, that's why it's important. Take your time, check everything to get it right. Okay, so here's what I discovered. I reached in here with my finger and I pulled the cam back. Now it lines up perfectly. Now my only problem is I've got a huge gap back there. And when this bike starts up, the cam will move in toward the case. That gap is excessive. Now, why it didn't work out when I was testing it, I have no idea. I don't know if it was where I didn't replace that seal yet or what. So I thought I had the cam play correct, So I'm so glad I checked, because it is not. The tolerances on this is kind of wide. It's 1/1000 to 500, or to the 500ths. So 0.05. So it's 0.001 to 0.05. This, the best I could gauge, was at 0.0675. So it's out of spec. So I'm going to need a shim in there. And now I also looked through my manuals and discovered that in 91, or after 91, I believe, they changed that thrust washer from the little ears to a round. So what is actually in here is a thrust washer. That's why I was like, where's the thrust washer at? Because I'm used to a thrust washer and usually a shim. However, this stock cam did not have a shim in it, just a thrust washer. So I'm going to have to order a shim. I'll go pick one up. And I need to close that gap and get it within spec. So I'm thinking 5/100ths shim, 0.05 will get me down in the specs I need. I want to start with that and see. So that's definitely the issue. So there you can see, oh well, I don't know if you can see or not, the big gap back there. It's pretty wide. I need another hand. Okay, hold on. See that big gap in there? A lot of play. Way too much. So that's why the cam was sitting off so much. And then if I take my hand in there and push the cam back against the back of the case, then you can see, hopefully, how far off the lobes are. They're just too much. So it's out of spec, and I'm going to need to order a shim or pick a shim up. Hopefully Harley's got one in stock. Push it back, and it's right dead on. A little bit up, too much, but it's supposed to float in there. So it's going to be a simple fix, one that I should have caught. I guess I don't know why it wasn't going in and out before I put the lifters in, but that's why when you put the lifters in, you check that stuff. So instead of setting on this video and waiting until I get the shim in and then doing that and making that one big long video, I'm going to stop here. It's going to be part 2, and then there'll be a part 3. When we come back, I'll go ahead and put that shim in, make sure it's right and it's what we need. I might have to get another. I'm going to pick up a couple of different shims. Then we'll go ahead and put the other lifters in, lifter block in the front. We'll go ahead and put that stud in. We'll get our new jugs on. We'll check the gaps on everything and put everything back together. So part 3 will finish this up. But I want to go ahead and get this out to you, and hopefully it'll help you. And then next video you see, we'll be back in here buttoning this up. So here's some things coming up. I got this Evo here in, hasn't ran in a while. I believe the last time it was tagged was 2021. Had a starter issue and it was kind of parked. So we're going to get this going. We're going to change the starter out if that is indeed the issue. We're going to check it. Probably a new battery, new brakes, brake flush, tune up, oils, plug, all that good stuff. I'm going to raise his bars up a little. This was, I think, his dad's bike, and rode it a couple times and then had the starter issue and he parked it. So I'm going to get it back on the road for him and he can enjoy it this summer. Also got this Road King we're going to get on and get the pipes on, get the bag covers on, get the heated grips on, a couple of other little things. And my son got on the ball and got everything ordered that should be in next week for his bike. And so we're going to get it back on the lift. Its tires and grips and carb rebuild on those 4 inline carbs, headlight, what else? Some other things. And that'll get him on the road. That'll get him running. That'll get him safe. We're also going to kind of build a little metal shield here behind the headlight to kind of hide all this, because he wants to keep this vintage gauge cluster. And so that'll be coming up on the video soon. Got some other things coming in the shop due in next week, so a lot of things to look forward to. So that's going to do it for this video, and then we'll get back into it when I get that cam pulled back out and shim in and put back in. You know, you know, it just is what it is. Hey, I want to tell you, these lifters that came out, it was time. Boy, they were about to go loose as a goose, and they're all chewed up. And the cam, I'll show you the cam next time in the video. It was chewed up as well. So this was definitely a good time to do the upgrades that needed to be done, but we got to do it right. We got to do it right. And doing it right sometimes is not the fastest. So we're taking our time, we're doing it right, and then it's done. Okay? So I'll see you next time, and tell your mom and them I said hi.